Hi, good morning. Today is September 26, 2025, and it's about 9:45 a.m. Central Time. Just one second. I just want to make sure that I have the settings correct. Yes, no, they're not correct. Hello. Okay. Yes, I had the wrong microphone. So I'm going to say that again just in case it didn't get recorded correctly. So today is September 26, 2025, and it's 9:46 a.m. Central Time, U.S. Central Time. And my name is Reynaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and I'm recording this video at my home at 26714 Valley Side Drive, Katy, Texas, 77494. It's a long introduction. So today, I just want to make a very quick session. This is going to be very short because I'm working on a few things and I need to get back to work. But these observations are important, and I think they might be time sensitive because of the things that are developing very quickly. So I thought it could be a good idea to make this update in case, just in case I get lucky and I have managed to get the attention of the real authorities. If they see this and this helps, I'm just trying to contribute to help, right? And as I said in the previous video, this comes from a humble place. I'm not by any means implying that I know more than anybody or that I'm better equipped or that it has nothing to do with that. The reason why I have this information is just because I have a privileged point of observation, because I've been surrounded by them for 20 years, and they've been doing these things at different scales. Like it wasn't always like this, but it has a scale. It has, escalated to this point through a period of 20 years. And during that time, I've been able to observe what they do because they are surrounding me, right? So it's kind of an intended consequence of what they did, right? So because of that, because of this privileged point of observation that I have, I'm able to see these things, right? And document them. So I see myself really as an observer, as a witness, right? And I'm just documenting what I witnessed, right? And I'm hoping that this documentation, and that's why I make it so, with so much detail, right? I put a lot of effort in getting the details, because I realize that this is a unique opportunity, right? This point of observation that I have doesn't occur in nature organically, right? And this might be a unique opportunity for everybody, right? So that's why I put such tremendous level of detail in the details of the observations, right? So, as usual, I didn't prepare this demo. If I'm gonna just, wing it. I do have a few things in mind that I think are important and are the reason why I want to make this quick demo. So it's going to be more on the ground observations, right? But so I usually, right, I start by doing local observations, and then I tie them to, bigger events or circles. But in this case, I think I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to first talk about the bigger things quickly, just to give context. So if anybody watches this video, they can understand why are these hyperlocal things important, right? So what's happening is that over the last few days, and I've already gave a little bit of context about this strategy that I'm executing in the last two videos. So I'm not going to go into much detail, but I want to say that I've been taking certain measures, or I've been executing a strategy that is focused on diplomacy, right? Based on the principle of the circle of transparency that I documented in the book, And I've been basically contacting key players in the international scene and sending them very well-crafted informational packages. Like you can think of them as intelligence briefs, basically, designed to be consumable by people at that level, right? So I've been doing that, right? At the same time, and I haven't mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it now. When I discover, and this is also documented in the books, what I call the gatekeeper algorithm, right? So this is a mechanism, a systematic way that this network uses to suppress information to authorities coming from witnesses or from victims or from targets, right? So they have systematic ways, systems, automated systems, to make sure that, if one of these serious reports are made, they don't get to the right person, right? And this is a combination of technology and human intervention. But through all this time, right, through the last, I would say, so the first serious report I made was in the year 2017, at the end of 2017, when I reported Michael Schubert and Hila Becker to the HR department of Google, right? Because I knew that they were a couple and they were basically giving promotions to each other, right? And, they were rigging the system, right? And the promotion system at Google is very rigorous, and I respected that process. So I thought, I should report the situation, right? And Google had this HR line that supposedly, would take complaints anonymously and, would investigate them. And it was a vendor. Google employed a vendor to do this. Sorry. To protect the company, right, from liability, from leaks and things like that. But anyhow, I made that complaint. Of course, it didn't go anywhere, right? But I think that was the first time that I took a step to, complain to somebody about, these things, right? These ruses and things that they do. So that would be 8 years ago, right? And through all this time, through all these years, there's been a series of situations in which I've been, I'm not a complainer. I'm not a person that, something happens to me, I try to resolve it myself. My first reaction is not to go complain, right? But there's been situations in which I've seen no other choice but to complain, right? And through the last 8 years, this has happened in a few occasions. Like in one case, I even went to the police, to the Fulshire police, and I have a video recording of the police officer telling me that he couldn't do anything, right? Officer Henry, right? Now, the reason I'm saying this, right, is because through the last 8 years, when these things rarely happen, right, that I saw no choice but to go and complain to the authorities or to somebody with some level of authority over the issue, it has never happened in the last 8 years that I get a positive or satisfactory response, right? My complaints are always either ignored or dismissed, or just never replied to. So of course, I know that there is intervention, right, in that process. But what was never clear to me, and this is, I'm going to start getting a little bit into the technical details here, was, if I think about this problem as a software architect, right? If I was, and this is what I do to reverse engineer what they do. I put myself on their shoes with the knowledge, with the technical knowledge that I have, and I think, and I ask myself, how would I solve this problem, right? How would I design a system that does this? And thinking about that usually gives me the ideas on how they're doing it, right? Because at the end, what they have is an army of people like me, of engineers, right? So through the last 8 years, I've been always, thinking when these things happen, how is that they're stopping my reports, right? I mean, I know there's human intervention, like Officer Henry, right? Or Officer Walker, right? Or Officer Bell, or Officer, what is the other one? Bell, Walker, Officer Gloria, right? Officer Bannett, Officer Henry, right? And there was two others, right? Like the one that when I made a complaint to the guy from Iron Tribe that, you know, was attacking me outside of the gym. Um, and but I can't recall the name of that officer off the top of my head. And there was another one. But anyhow, so I know there's human intervention. And I know that there's also automation, right? Because sometimes I make the reports electronically. And for example, when I made the report to that HR vendor of Google, I went through the lengths of buying, because I didn't want this to be traced back to me. I was employed by Google, and Michael Chuper was my manager, right? So I didn't want him to fire me, right? Obviously. So I bought a cell phone, like a prepaid phone. I paid for it in cash, I remember. I bought it in New York, and I made the call from Texas, right? I bought the phone at the, I'm mentioning this in case this is traceable, I don't know. I bought the phone in the Verizon or AT&T store that is next to the Whole Foods in Tribeca, next to the apartment where I was staying, 200 Chambers. And then I waited until I came to Texas, and I made the call from Texas, right, to make sure that this wasn't traced back to me. And still, the report was, blocked. So I didn't give my name, I didn't give my number, right? I made the phone from a prepaid phone that I paid for in cash. How did they block it, right? So I knew there was automation. But I'm mentioning all this because, like, I don't know, maybe 2 months and a half ago, I started exchanging messages with the Venezuelan informant, right? Trying to understand how they do it myself, right? I didn't tell him exactly what I was trying to find out, but I asked questions that, were designed to try to get information that could help me answer this question. And I'm not, this session is going to be quick. I'm not going to get into too much detail on this one. But basically, the set of answers he gave me, and here, I'm not going to say that he told me this exactly, but it's a combination of what he told me over a series of back and forth questions and answers, plus my technical knowledge, right? I can fill in the gaps with what he told me, and I can form an idea of how this could be done, okay? And here, this is a theory. What I'm going to say is a theory, it's a speculation. I haven't seen this system with my own eyes, but I believe it could be this, what they're doing, right? So based on the series of answers that the informant gave me to my questions, that I designed to try to understand this, and my technical knowledge coming from being an engineer working in software for over 25 years. I worked at Google, I worked at Yahoo, I worked at Goldman Sachs, at Twitter, right? With all that software engineering experience and what the informant told me, I believe this is probably how they do it. And again, this is a theory. But I believe that what they've done is that they have designed, well, before I tell you that, let me tell you, for the people that are not technical, how the internet works very quickly, right? So the internet is a decentralized network. Like, there is not a single central internet server, right? Like, it's all a connection or a collection of computers, of servers, nodes that are talking to each other and are passing messages, right? So one node, one computer, even your computer, right, your modem, it could get a package that is not intended to your house, is addressed to another house. So what the modem does, right, it takes the package, it inspects it, inspects the package, and if it's not addressed to you, it will pass it to another computer, right? And this process repeats, and this, of course, a more smart routing mechanism than what I'm describing. But at the end, right, the packages will arrive to the destination. So this is, it's good because it scales and it's cheap, right? You don't have to have a dedicated infrastructure to route messages to specific places. But it has a weakness, right? The weakness is that any single node in that network, if maliciously compromised, could drop a package, right? A node could say, oh, I'm going to, oops, I dropped it. I forgot what it was, right? And then the whole message gets corrupted or gets discarded, right? It doesn't get to its destination. So from what the informant told me and what I know of these technical topics and networking, I believe that what they did is that they engineer a system in which, because they have control of critical pieces of networking infrastructure around the world, like Akamai servers or DNS servers of Newstar, right? What they've done is that they implemented a piece of technology that when it detects that something sensitive to them that could harm them passes through the network, it gets dropped. And therefore, it never arrives to its destination, the packages. I'm talking about the transport layer of the networking infrastructure, right? So the TCP/IP or UDP protocols, right? So at that level, at the transport layer of the OSI model, they drop packages of things that could be damning to them, right? So for example, if I send an email from my Gmail account, right, to say the IRS, right, and the email mentions Diosdado Cabello, the email gets dropped at the network level. Like it goes out from my Gmail, right? Because otherwise, if there's an audit, the authorities could tell, Google is stopping the mail, right? Which, would be obstruction of justice. So they can't do that. But after the mail leaves Google, SMTP server, so the outgoing mail server, at the network layer, while the email is in transit to the email server of the IRS, in that transit, one of their network's important network nodes drops the package, or drops one or multiple or all the packages, right? So effectively, the email never arrives to the destination. And this, what I'm describing, is an implementation for stopping email, okay? But they have similar things for stopping other type of traffic, right? For other protocols as well. So effectively, right, it's a systematic way at the very foundational layer of the infrastructure of the internet of stopping communications that are damning to them. So I realized this, right? And I've known this for like 2.5 months. And that's why, I don't know, when eventually somebody investigates all this and sees that I've been mailing things to the IRS and to other agencies and through physical mail and email. And at some point, like 3 months ago, I stopped mailing things to the IRS because I realized this, right? Like I realized that they have a systematic way of stopping. So if I mail something, they do the same at USPS, right? If I mail a package at USPS, they have 2 ways to stop it. One is while it's in transit, right? They could change the package, change the contents, right? Send only empty pages, blank pages, right? Or they could stop it inside with the gatekeeper, right? So I'm saying all this to explain that over the last 10 days or so, because I've been thinking about this problem for a long time, as you can see. So I had already designed a way to get around this, right? And I'm not going to get into details how I did it, but it's network engineering, right? I mean, networking theory, right? I'm not talking about computer networks. I'm talking about general networks, right? From a conceptual point of view. The same thing I was talking about in the last 2 sessions when I said, well, why they have to have the houses next to the target? Well, so they can reduce the number of subgraphs that they have to traverse depending on the path that the target takes, right? Or why do they need the predictable request or the known plain text attack? To reduce the number of possibilities to be able to brute force the encryption keys, right? So it's the same thing, right? So I realized that, most of the things that they do are based in this principle, right? They try to stop or to block communication, right? Or to contain damage as closest as they can to the source, because it's the way that they can contain a bigger, a larger amount of things in a single place. Think about it. If they didn't did this blocking, right, at the transport layer that I'm describing, and I was able to actually send emails to anybody, then they would have to have gatekeepers at every single place, right? They will have to have gatekeepers at the IRS, at the DOJ, which, they probably have some gatekeepers, right? But if they allowed me to send emails to anybody without stopping them at the source, right, or very close to the source, it would mean that they would need an incredible number of gatekeepers everywhere, because I could send this to authorities in Japan, right? As I've tried to do, right? Or I could send this to authorities in Taiwan, or I could send this to authorities in Germany, in France, right? And they would have to cover all the institutions in all the countries, right? Or all the important countries that could harm them, right? So you see, the number of possibilities we have to cover explodes exponentially, and because it's the number of possible channels of communication multiplied by the number of countries, right? It's undoable, right? Because remember, they only have 0.04% of the population, really, right? The 2% of the people in 2% of the human systems. So this is a fact they can't fight. So the solution is to contain the problem as close as they can to you, right? In this case, making sure that they can drop any of my emails as soon as I send it, and do it in a way that is not obvious to me. Because if the email bounces back, then I know they're blocking it, right? And what I will do, I will try to find the email in another way, and then maybe I succeed and they lose, right? So they have to block it, but make me think that the email went through, right? And the perfect way to do this is not to make the emails bounce back, but to make the email packages just drop in transit somewhere. Because if they drop in transit, and this is interesting, right? Like, I haven't had a chance to review the protocol, because there's a protocol that defines email communication, right? That mechanism of the bounce back, right, that's why it works. The mechanism of the bounce back of the emails happens when the email reaches the destination server, but the actual address is not found. So for example, if you send an email to somebody that has a Gmail address, right? And you misspell the email, but it says gmail.com. Because it says gmail.com, it will reach the Gmail servers, Google. And when Google looks up that user, it doesn't find it. So Google sends the bounce back email, right? But that mechanism requires that the incoming email arrive to Google servers. But if they drop the email in the middle, the email never arrives. Google never knew this email was even sent. Therefore, it cannot even bounce back, right? So of course, the target sends the email, and is just waiting, right? The target is waiting indefinitely for a response that never arrives, because the email never really arrived, right? It was dropped at the network transport layer somewhere in the middle. So knowing this, right, I realized 2 months ago, more or less, that, well, I understood what they were doing, and I realized that they can have all the email providers or all the network nodes in the world, right? So I designed a mechanism. I mean, I did some serious, engineering on this, and I didn't design it, I devised a way to send my emails so they couldn't be stopped in this way. And I've been doing this for the last 10 days and emailing these people that are diplomats, right, in these countries, or that work in the defense committees of these countries, right, that are in the circle of transparency described in the book. So very, very high level people. And I've been sending them these packages, right? And I believe I succeeded. Like, the packages are not getting stopped, right? And I have many data points to why I'm saying this, but I'm not going to get into much detail. Please believe me, I'm pretty sure it's working, right? And that's why they're in this panic mode in the last 3 days, right? Now, I'm going to say this here in case they do something to me, right? One of the agencies that I recontacted in this way, because before, right, in the last years, I've been sending emails to the DEA, well, because Diosdado Cabello is a wanted individual by the DOJ. Him and 14 other high-ranking Venezuelan officials, right? There's wanted posters in the DOJ website for them. And I've tried to send these emails to the DEA before. Of course, they're never replied to because they blocked them, right? How? Well, identifying in the body of the email, or in the subject, or in the body, or in the attachments, keywords related to Diosdado Cabello, right? Or to them, right? And if they see anything of that, the email gets dropped. So, and of course, the IRS reports, right? The same mechanism, but on the physical mail. So now that I know what the problem is, because I've debugged it, I can fix it, right? Or I can go around it. So besides the diplomats, as part of the circle of transparency, I've also sent new communications to the DEA and to the IRS, giving them all the information that I sent before that was stopped by them, right, by the network, plus the books, like with the full books, right, that has everything. They have everything, right? So the 20 years of investigation directly delivered to these two investigative agencies that have jurisdiction over. After I did that, they're in panic mode, right? That's why they started retrieving the cars parked Moscow style from Valley Side Drive and Lara Creek, and this is a small detail I wasn't going to mention in this session, but the dog, the cat, right? They're called cats, right? Like the agents that Diosdado Cabello assigns to the target, like to be the shadow of the target and invisible and all that. They're called cats in this network. And so one of my cats, the one that I have here on Lara Creek Drive, not the corner house, the next one, right? Actually, let me show you, because I think it's important to put a face to the character, right? Okay. So let me show you. Okay. So if you look for my house, which is 26 Valley Side Drive, Katy, Texas. So that's the house where I am right now. So the cat I'm referring to is this one at the Lara Creek Drive, right? According to, let me see if I can find it for you, to give you the name of the cat. And of course, I reported this cat via multiple channels to many people. Yeah, so supposedly, right? It's called Warren Lawrence and Tracy E. But I know this is a fake name because this person is Cuban, right? Like I'm Venezuelan. When I see a person from Venezuela or from Cuba, I know, right? But he has this, Americanized name. It's obviously fake, right? So Warren Lawrence, right? Supposedly, that's the alias. So what I was going to tell you, right? If you see this, right? He always has, you see this car over here? I'm going to give you the coordinates. 29.71131 minus 95.84.023, which is marking the Elon Musk joint, right? And it's this blue SUV. You can see it in this picture here at the right. This blue SUV is, I think it's like a Cherokee. So that SUV is perpetually parked there because it's a surveillance vehicle, right? Watching the house and watching the house next door, which is the John D. Cook, right? The East European man. So, they started taking out all the cars, including that. And next to that car, he always has parked there a white SUV, older model, same principle, right? Another surveillance car. And this cat, he's invisible. Like, in 6 years, 7 years, I've only seen him like 3 times. And those 3 times have been in the last 2 months. So what I was going to say about this cat is that, they started taking out the vehicles. I imagine removing the equipment, right? And then they brought them back last night. But this morning, after something happened, which I'm going to describe what it was, and I'm sorry, like if I'm going back and forth, it's been a very complicated sequence of events. So he did something interesting that I've noticed before. I'm going to mention it in case, right? So he did 2 things. One, and as I said, these cars, the blue SUV and the white SUV, are always parked there, and they have rarely moved in the last 4 years, right? So this morning, he took the 2 cars and moved them to the other side of the street, looking on the other direction. So instead of pointing towards this street, instead of pointing towards Pine Hills Drive, like the front of the car, he moved them to the other side of the street, pointing towards Valleyside Drive. And I'm mentioning this because I've seen this pattern before, both here at Lake Point Estates. I don't, I have to do some analysis on the footage to double check, right? But this is a theory at this point. Don't, take this with a grain of salt. But I believe this on itself is a signal. Like the direction in which those surveillance car vehicles are parked signals to the other agents in the street some important status change. Like, for example, if the cars are pointing toward my house, it means, we are in danger. Like, everybody stay put, right? Like, don't do anything stupid right now. And so he moved the cars, and then he came out dressed in orange with a bright orange t-shirt and started mowing the lawn. And the reason I'm mentioning this is documented in the website. Please check it out. Like, when these cats, I'm not saying that everybody who's dressed in orange is an agent. I'm not saying that. But when the cats, the ones that are supposed to be invisible, come out of their houses, which they never do by design, dressed in orange, it usually means either, like emergency mode, or I'm being extracted, right? And this has been documented before multiple times, and it's in the website. I've seen this 1,000 times, maybe, right, in the last 5 years. And this is an example of what I say about the privileged observation point that I have, right? Like, I would never be able to see this. I would have never been able to see these things if they hadn't put me here, right? But now that I've seen them, I will share them, right? So anyhow, he apparently is going to be extracted, right? That's what it's supposed to mean. Now, let me tell you why, right? So, two major things. One is that I send that package to the IRS, basically telling the IRS, and the package is posted on the YouTube channel, right? With the actual FedEx label and everything. Basically saying to the IRS, look, I've sent you 49 previous submissions, and they either stopped or never replied to. And I believe it's because they implemented the gatekeeper algorithm, maybe even within the IRS. So please, reassess, and I sent them again all the 49 links of all the previous submissions and the books, right? But this time I did it through these other methods that I've designed or devised that I know is less likely they will be able to stop it, at least before they reach the IRS. They will have to stop them inside, right? But if the authorities are watching and they make that mistake, it will only help me, right? So that was what triggered that. I mean, that was what triggered the removal of the vehicles yesterday. But today, he basically is signaling that he might be extracted, right? Or that there's an emergency in this area. And this comes from another thing that happened. So what happened was, and now I'm going to go more into the technical, in the ground level things, and I'm going to talk about some things that are a little bit personal to me. And as I said in the previous demo, I don't do this to talk about me. I don't see myself, but as a witness, right? And I'm just telling you what I'm observing, right? So what triggered all this, right, was that on September 11, when we went to court for that hearing, for that quote-unquote divorce petition that I believe was filed because Diosdado Cabello ordered it to be filed, 3 days after, I named him in a Form 211 form, and I sent it to the IRS. We went to the hearing, and this is documented extensively, so I'm not going to go into much detail. Basically, the summary is Morgan Hibner was pushing, or she filed repeatedly several motions asking the judge to order me undergo a psychiatric evaluation, a forced psychiatric evaluation, to medicate me, right? And say that I'm crazy, that I'm delusional. Of course, the only person that this would help would be Diosdado Cabello. Nobody else would benefit from this, right? So, but she made the mistake in one of those hearings of asking me something about my refugee status, right? Which allowed me to get that into the record. I'm a protected person, according to the Refugee Convention of 1951. And it is stated in that convention that it is a form of torture It is considered torture to force a refugee through medical procedures that are not really needed. The reason why this is in the convention, and this is more historic, right? But the reason why is because, well, these world leaders that got together in 1951, they knew that it was a state tactic to torture opponents with medical procedures. They saw this during the Second World War, right? And because of that, they had the foresight of including that, article into the Refugee Convention. So if this judge orders me to go through a forced psychiatric evaluation, knowing that I don't need it, it is a form of torture, according to the convention, a form of torture of a person that is protected by international law, right? So there's nothing that could be more serious than this. Of course, the judge didn't order it, right? But now, because the judge didn't order it, then the whole motion for taking the child, basically, through legal means, they're using the parental rights of my former partner to kidnap the child. And the child is a refugee, right? Because the refugee status of the father extends to the son by international law concepts, right? Family unity is called. So what happened on September 11 was that the judge denied the psychiatric evaluation request, but proceeded to order supervised visits, meaning he took away my parental rights, although he had just denied the request for a psychiatric evaluation. And Morgan Heibner is on the record saying in that very same proceeding, on the previous hearing of September 8th, that she said something to the effect that the request for the sole conservatorship of the child being assigned to the petitioner, so my former partner, was tied to the request for psychiatric evaluation. Basically saying, yeah, we need to give all the parental rights to the petitioner because this person is crazy, right? That's what she was implying. But they just denied the request for the psychiatric evaluation. Therefore, the motion it's baseless. Like there's no base for the motion, right? But still, the judge ordered to give the petitioner all the parental rights and strip them away from me, which is unconstitutional. There's no basis for that because he didn't order the psychiatric evaluation. That would have made logical sense if he had ordered a psychiatric evaluation, but he can't do it because it would be a form of torture, according to the Refugee Convention of 1951, right? It would be a serious step if he does that. So it's a contradiction, right? Anyhow, the judge gave the order and he said, well, I'm going to order this temporary order of 60 days supervised visits. And the supervisor of the visit name was my former partner. Imagine that. The person that is trying to force you into a forced psychiatric evaluation, which is a medical procedure, by force, right, using the court, is the same person that is going to supervise your visits with your child. And, it's, of course, unconstitutional. And not only that, it gives this person that is already harassing me with the courts a tremendous power over me because now she can unilaterally take away the child from me anytime she wants, right? It's okay. I understand the situation. I can't do anything, right, at that point. But what triggered all this was that, and the way, and I'm going to give a bit more detail because it may be different in other countries, and if people see this, they may not understand, right? So the way it works, at least here in Katy, Texas, is that the judge gives the orders verbally, and the orders take effect from the moment that the order is verbalized by the judge, right? So on September 11, he said 60 days. So 60 days without my parental rights. And they're assigned to the petitioner, right, for 60 days. Then the lawyer that is making the motion drafts a draft of the order, basically putting in writing what the judge said. And then she has to send it to the other party for review, and the other party, if everything is okay, signs the order, and then it's sent to the judge, and the judge finally signs it. And then it becomes a formal order. But remember, the judge gave the order on September 11, and it should be 60 days from September 11. So what Morgan Heibner did is that she changed completely the orders that the judge gave. She introduced orders that the judge never gave about financial matters, and she imposed in that draft financial orders that the judge never rendered. And she changed the term from 60 days to indefinite. So like the term of the orders, instead of being 60 days in her draft, were until the divorce is finalized, right? So basically, she is stripping in her draft, in her proposed draft, right? She was stripping my parental rights indefinitely. It could be 6 months, a year, imagine, right? And of course, they do this, they want to do this to have something to silence me, right? If you keep talking, you are not going to see the child, right? That's basically the weapon, right? So that's what they did, right? Now, what I did on response, I filed 2 things. One, I filed a response in opposition, right, to that draft, because that's not what the judge said, and she's changing the time frame as if she was a judge, right? And then, oh, and by the way, she the cherry on top, she misrepresented the situation in the draft. She made it like she wrote the draft as if the draft was being written by the petitioner, like if the petitioner was acting pro se, basically, which is not the case. I imagine it's a way for her to elude or to try to elude responsibility if I notice what she's doing, right? And I complain. But I mean, how can she elude responsibility when all this is coming from her? She's the attorney on file, right? But anyhow, so I filed a response opposing to that illegal, fraudulent draft that she drafted, right? I gave her a chance to correct it beforehand. Let me tell you that. I sent her a very respectful, professional email the day before, so yesterday morning, giving her more than 24 hours to withdraw, like to confirm to me that she's not going to submit that abomination. But she didn't, right? I gave her a deadline. I told her before the 25th at 5 p.m. She didn't reply. At 5:01, I filed my motion in opposition. And at 5:06, I filed a motion to strike and a motion for sanctions. Because what she's doing is not only immoral and questionable, it's illegal. Right? She is changing the orders of a judge to kidnap a refugee convention child. By legal means, again, right? I'm not saying they're taking the child at gunpoint. They're taking them at court point, right? And in that motion for sanctions, I included as an exhibit 3 transcripts actually of a transcript of a 3-part demo that I gave back in early June 2025, months ago. I think I haven't even met Morgan Heidner in person at that point. And in that demo, using the data in the Elon Musk GeoIndex, I identified, using analytical tools and data analysis, technologies that I've learned, like my tradecraft, things that I've learned at Google, right? Using knowledge and data analysis, I was able to forecast months ago, before even interacting with Morgan Heidner, that she would do this, right? That she would harass me using the court. So I think it's very telling, because it shows that the data is accurate, right? How could I have known that she would do all this before I even interacted with her in court? Now, interestingly, in those demos, and I didn't design this, I had no way to design this because I didn't know what was going to happen in 2 or 3 months, right? This happened organically. But in those demos, I also give other forecasts and other inferences from the data in the GeoIndex that I captured from Diosdado Cabello and Vladimir Padrino Lopez and Elon Musk about people at Lake Point Estates, like Phil Denning, like Mark Swisher, Robert Mueller, Eckhart, Sachs, right? Very important people for this network. Mueller He was the head of the FBI, right, for years. And he has a house in Lake Point Estates, feet away from my house. So now, because of what Morgan Heibner did, of impersonating the judge and changing the ruling and the orders, these transcripts are now part of the record in that case, right? So it's a nuclear bomb, right? They can't take it out. Well, I mean, maybe they can't take it out of the record, right? But you know, I guess it will be visible, right? So that's why the cat is being extracted, right? So I sent that document this morning at 6 a.m. I spent all night working on that, right? So that's maybe why you see my face, like, you know, it's because I spend the night working, right? Trying to get my child back. So I sent the document at 6 a.m. more or less, 6:15, something like that. And this thing of the cat moving the cars and, you know, dressed in orange, you know, doing things outside so everybody can see him, that he's being extracted, happened like 2 hours after that. So obviously, right, that hit a spot. So that's what I'm going to say about that for now. On another topic, yesterday, I was talking to my former partner, and she told me that she was invited to a birthday party today, right, at 5 p.m. with her friends, Bree, Ryan, Angela, you know, all these people, right? Diana E. Chavez and Rebecca, right? And remember, Diana E. Chavez is married to this Asian agent that is very prominent, documented before. So, you know, they're all going to get together this afternoon at 5 p.m., right? I imagine it is a form of coordination, right? Because they see this situation now, and by the way, all of them are mentioned in that transcript that I filed in the court this morning, which is very relevant because the transcript is there not to show that the network exists, right? I filed the transcript as a way to show that I could predict what Morgan Heibner would do even before she did it, based on the data, right? So it's directly relevant to the bad faith litigation, which is the basis for the motion for sanctions. So the judge has to look at this, right? Has to. So, and you know, by the way, I'm already working on the appeal. Like I already have the appeal ready to go, right? So if they keep the child and keep doing this, it's going to escalate, and I'm going to take it to wherever I have to take it. If I have to take it to the Supreme Court, I will. So that's what triggered all this, right? So because they're in this panic mode, they organize this birthday party, right? And I've seen this pattern also before, multiple times. The technique is, you know, they take somebody whose birthday is in that month, and they say, well, you know, it doesn't matter. What day is today? 2026? The birthday could be 2 weeks from now, right? But they're going to say, oh, no, I moved it because I'm going on vacation, like some excuse, right? So they always move the birthday sooner if they need to meet, right? But I believe, and I say this because of what's happening, right? Because I contacted the DEA, contacted the IRS through means that they cannot easily intercept with their network technique, right? With the package dropping technique. And because I filed that nuclear bomb after Morgan Heibner changed the rulings of the judge, right? So I think it's just a mechanism for them to get together and talk about things that they can't talk with the secret app, with the, you know, with the Second Fire app, or with the, you know, with the Hell app that they have. So that's so I'm mentioning this because if any authorities, and that's why I said that it was time sensitive, if anybody is watching what's happening, well, what you have to do is to follow Diana E. Chavez Doria, Ryan, and I'm sorry if I'm overstepping. I don't mean to tell anybody what to do, right? I'm just, you know, I'm just trying to solve a problem, right? And that's why I say these things. And excuse me if this is overstepping. I don't, by any means, intend that. But if I was working on that problem, I would follow Diana E. Chavez, the husband of Diana E. Chavez, Ryan, Angela, Michael Cohen, Rebecca, and Virgil Chavez, right? To see what they're talking about, right? And who else is going to that place. So it could be an opportunity to discover and understand who else is pulling the strings here, right? See if this traces back to people like what's his name? Eduardo Hurtado, right? Or Daniel Molero. And now that I speak about Daniel Molero, and note, I'm saying Daniel, not David. Okay, this is important. So I'm going to talk about this now. So, in the book, and I have to think about how to do this properly, right? I don't know if I have to fix the book, like change the name, to make it accurate, or create an errata in the book, or create a chapter updating what happened, right? It's I think forensically would be the better path, right? Because it preserves how I got to that. And on this, I'm not going to give the full details, the technical details. I got to this via a combination of human intelligence and, informants, and technology, right? But I offer to give the full details to the authorities, like the FBI, if they're interested, right, in knowing how I got this information. But for this session, I'm going to limit what I say, mostly because of the time. Like, I don't want to spend an hour explaining the technology because time is at a prime today. But the short story is that in the book, right, I describe in a lot of places a person or a character by the name of David Molero, who I believe, or I believed that he was really, Salvador Mendez was really David Molero, right? But based on new information that I've received and technology and iterations that I've done, I believe that the actual person is actually Daniel or Daniel Molero, Daniel in Spanish, right? Daniel. And remember, there's a chapter in the book about the Molero clan. There's 7 siblings, right? All of them are part of the network. All of them are agents. So, when I say this, there is no risk that, oh, I'm talking about somebody, and then the person that I mentioned before, David Molero, was not involved, and I name it. No, he is an agent as well. But, it's just a different agent than the one that was the cat, right? The cat, I think at this point, is really Daniel Molero. And I'm going to give some information here, right? Okay, so one thing is that, remember, this character, right, through technology, has been co-clustered with Daniel King Everette, which is the cat that they had in the other house. Let me go to that place, right? So if I go to my other house, 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, right? So this is my other house, right? This is Robert Mueller's house over here, right? So Robert Mueller is 24926 North Point Place. In front of Robert Mueller, this house over here, 24927 North Point Place, Katy, Texas, 77494. That house, as you can see here, is registered to King Daniel Everette Christina S. Okay, and you see the Daniel here, right? This is not the only data point, but this is one of the data points, right? That has a name match with Daniel Molero. And I haven't said this before, but I'm going to take this opportunity to explain how this obfuscation technique for the names, what they do, right? So what they do, and this is what I'm going to mention, I'm going to go into the full details, but I've arrived to this conclusion through the use of technology, data analysis at planet scale. So I'm pretty sure about this. So what they do is that they pair 2 agents, right? Usually it's one prominent agent and one not so prominent agent, right? There are a couple, like a man and a woman, right? But the one that is prominent is one of the two, not the two. And I think this is risk management, really, right? It's a way to hedge. Like if you put two very prominent agents together and they get captured, it could have serious consequences, right? So what you do is that you pair one very prominent agent with a not so prominent agent, right? So what they do to obscure the names is that in the registrations of the houses, like in this case, right, King Daniel Everett Christina S. So what they would do, right, the less prominent agent would have a name that is a very long name with a lot of like multiple first name, like first name, middle name, first last name, second last name, like a very long name with multiple words, right? And when they register the house, the registration is set with all the names of the non-prominent agent and only one name of the very prominent agent. Like in this case, right, my suspicion would be that the non-prominent agent is a combination of Everett, Christina, and King, right? And the prominent agent is Daniel Molero, right? So when they register the house, they make a clerical error, and the house ends up being registered to King, Daniel, Everett, and Christina, right? I mean, all the names are there from the two parties, right? In one way or the other. It's like, I mean, all those names belong to the two parties. So when it comes down to that, and they want to sell the house or something, they can say, if anybody says, no, the names don't match, they would say, oh, it was a clerical error. The clerk put too many names of one party, and there wasn't enough space for the other name, right? And that's why the last name, Molero, was left out. But for some reason, and this, I don't really understand the reason behind this, right? I can see the observation statistically, but I don't know what is the thinking of this. And I'm saying this in case authorities know, right? Because, I mean, this is what I mean. If I was them, right? I mean, if I'm going to do this, why not go all the way, right? I mean, why not just use a completely made up name for this agent? I mean, for Daniel Molero. Why put the Daniel in the registration at all? Why not name this house or register this house to King Francisco Everett Christina S? Like nothing with Daniel, right? I don't know the answer to this, right? I don't know if it's that the house is really registered to the agent and is part of the payment, and they want the agent to be able to cash in on the house, right? So be able to do that, some part of his name has to be in the registration. Or it is because if they get investigated, it would just be too suspicious if none of the names of the person living there is registered to the house, right, on the house registration. I don't know. I don't know what's the answer. But there has to be a practical reason because they're not crazy, right? If they're putting at least one name of the agent in the registration, is because there is a reason, there is a need, not a reason, a need to do that. Now, I'm going to give you a second example of this, right? So this is, you're going to laugh when I show you this, right? So this is, so this one over here, right? So, okay, so look at this registration, right? So this is 3214 Scout Island in Katy, Texas, right? So look at the registration name. Bravo Johnny. I don't know if you remember the cartoon, right? Johnny Bravo, right? Like it's a cartoon for kids, right? So they put that in the name. Alfredo Aguiar, my own last name, right? This is an implementation. This is a super tremendous implementation. And this was one of the first things that got flagged with the pipeline, when the pipeline was like a week old, right? This is so easy to see. I'm gonna tell you why, right? In a second. But then the other names are Gladys, Kant. You see the Kant, right? This is the house of Alvin Cantero Mina. So that Kant that you see there is supposed to be the Cantero, right? So they had to put something of his name in the registration, right? It's the same pattern with the Daniel King Everett house, right? The Daniel had to be in the registration. And that's probably because his real name is Daniel Molero, right? And in this case, his real name is Alvin Cantero Mina. So the Kant had to be at least there somewhere, right? Now, there's a lot of things to unpack about this house, okay? I'm going to start one by one in no particular order, but they are all very telling. Okay, so the first one is the Bravo Johnny, right? So that is a cartoon name. Just put that, right? Alfredo is a familiar name to me because Alfredo Ortega, right? He is the brother of Endels Ortega, and they were the ones that took me to Florida for the interview rules documented before. Aguiar is my own last name, and is also the last name of my uncle, who's married to, again, Endels Ortega, right? So right here, just this Alfredo Aguiar is a triple familiar names pattern match, right? You see, what I'm doing with technology is scoring the names of the houses with a technology very similar to the Q-rewrite technology of Google. And this is a very technical term. Please, if anybody watches this, go to Google and talk to somebody from the Q-rewrite team, okay? I believe their scorer that they use to track these agents with the registrations of the houses is an implementation of the Q-write scorer, because that's exactly what I do, and it works like a charm, right? So Alfredo Aguiar, right there is a triple match, right? So this boosts the score in my pipeline to the roof. Also, Gladys is the middle name of Penelope Suarez, who is the girlfriend of Alvin Cantero Mina and lives next door to this house. So she herself is in the registration of this house, right? And this is mind-blowing, because it begs the question: why did they need to put one of the names of Penelope and one of the names of Alvin Cantero into this registration of this house, right? So they both own the house in reality, right? So Penelope is renting one house. She supposedly rents the house where she lives, but she owns the house next door with Alvin Cantero Mina. So maybe Alvin Cantero is the husband. I don't know, right? I don't have the access to data to be able to tell that, right? But it's very telling, right? So anyhow, what I want to show you is the technique of obscuring the names, more than talking about these particular people, right? Is the technique of obscuring the names in the registration of the houses by using very long names for the less prominent agent. In this case, Penelope would be the less prominent agent. The more prominent agent is Alvin. He's the one who had intelligence about me and who was catfishing me with the Second Fire app, right, or equivalent. So that's why his name is the one that is more obscure in the registration. Like Gladys, she has the full name, right? But he only has 4 letters of one of his last names, right? Now, another thing to unpack here is the choice of the word can't. That is not a random choice, okay? That has to do, and this is getting more into the indexing technologies of Google. And this has been documented in the books, to death. All these systems that they have implementing these tracking systems are based on Google technologies, right? And I've mentioned in this session just already 3, right? The reason is, in Google's web search index, there are certain words, of course, that are more frequent than others. Like, if you think about it, right? I think the most frequent word in Google index was the word, to give you an idea, right, was the word HTML. This is because every single web page in the world, or 99% of them, has a word in the code of the page at the top that says HTML. Right? So this makes it that this word is very common. And in information retrieval, it is a well-known fact that as something becomes more and more common, it's more and more difficult to find. Think about it, right? If you are looking for something that is blue, imagine a boat that is painted blue, and it's in the middle of the ocean. It would be very hard to find because everything is blue, right? You would have to have a very sophisticated system to be able to find a blue boat in the ocean. That's why the boats are never painted blue, right? Because they would be impossible to find. So when you name somebody Kant, it makes this page very hard to find. Even if it gets indexed by Google, they will make sure it doesn't get indexed, but any other search engine that maybe they don't control or that come up in the future indexes this page, it would be very hard to find the word can't, right? By searching by the word can't. Because can't is a word that is immensely common in the internet. You know, people talking about things that can and cannot be done, right? It's a very common word. So that's why they name these agents can't. And good examples of this is Cantero and Canto, the one that is a police officer that was following me when I was sending the RS packages, right? And that followed me to the Fritos factory on 1463. All this is documented in the archive. So that's why these sensitive agents are named can't. The prefix of the name is can't, so they can obscure the names and they can hide them from in the internet very quickly, right? If they need to. So I'm giving this kind of deep dive into this technique to explain that I believe that this agent, Daniel King Everette, which I've identified through the use of technology before as potentially David Molero, is not really David Molero, but it's Daniel Molero, one of the Molero brothers, right? So again, if I was authorities and I was interested in solving this puzzle, I would try to locate Daniel Molero, who's here in Katy, right? And follow him. Like I would follow him to see if he's meeting with my former partner, if he's in that apartment complex where they have Marcelo, because he has to be close by. They can't have him very, very far away because they need to communicate, right? They need to talk to each other for coordination. And the further away he is, it means more jumps on the network communication, right? Like the packages would need to travel through more cars to get from one to the other. And that is a risky process. That's the reason why all these agents in this street that are now quarantined, thanks to my efforts, they always have to wait until the black Tesla of my former partner comes in to get their messages or to send their messages, because they're minimizing the hops, because the more hops is the more risk they take, right? So because of that reasoning, he has to be very close by to the apartment where they have Marcelo, which I want to show you which it is in case anybody sees this video, to give you the higher ground, basically, or to try to help you get the higher ground. So this is my house, right? 26714 Valleyside Drive. And if you take Cinco Ranch, which is this road over here, right? You go to Cinco Ranch, and in the corner of Cinco Ranch with 1463, which is this one, there's an HEB, which is an important network hub, which is the buffer zone of this apartment complex, which is heavily under the control of the 7. So this apartment complex that is over here, and they changed the name. Oh no, they put a painting company in it, obviously. Okay, so my son is being basically held at court point, at this point, exactly at these coordinates, right? 29.71917, that's the latitude, and the longitude is minus 95.85150. So Daniel Molero has, by definition, to be very close to this point, right? He could be maybe in the other side of this complex, right? It would be an easy way to route messages without, or even to communicate in person if they need to, right? Or he could be the other important area that I've identified before are these houses over here, right? On the other side of the street. And I already mailed some books to some of those houses. So it would be an easy way to make the communication with just a few hops, right? And the other house that was important that I also sent a book to is this house over here, right? 5002 Roundabout Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And the coordinates of this house is 29.71906 minus 95 0.84478. So I believe Daniel Molero is in one of those houses, right? It's probably, right? I mean, I'm not a fortune teller, right? I cannot be sure. But logic tells me that he has to be very close because of the obvious logistical reasons I just mentioned. And he has to be in a place that aligns in latitude with the exact apartment, because that also minimizes the hops. Why? Because the geo-index is a grid system. It's like a matrix, right? Physically. So if you put points, if you're trying to send messages between points that don't align in latitude or longitude, you necessarily have to get more hops, because you have to cross, you have to traverse in one direction. Remember, like this, you make the jumps in, either latitude or longitude. So you have to move the data on the longitude line and then traverse to latitude line, right? To do like an L, right, in the grid, or on the other direction. But either way, it would force you to do more hops. And more hops mean two things. One, well, more risk of intersection, and also you have to traverse through multiple different network channels. So you have to cross subnets. So that also makes it more risky, right? This is network theory, and I think it's getting into too much detail, but suffice to say that I believe he has to be close by, and he has to be in a point that aligns with latitude or longitude, right? So, I think it would be trivial for authorities if they investigate this to find Daniel Molero, right? And once they find Daniel Molero, I think it will be game over. Because, well, first of all, Ryan, Ryan, Francisco, Patricia, Francisco Castillo, Patricia Rojas, Angela Cohen, Bree Hardy, Diana y Chavez Doria, all these people must know Daniel Molero, and they must know his relationship to all this, right? And all these people carry immense liability because of the financial crimes and the crypto payments that are recorded in the geo index, and they might talk, right? They might confirm that this is the case or not, right? But it's probably trivial, right, for authorities to uncover all this, right? I mean, if it's Daniel Molero, the person that was doing all this for the last 10 years. Now, I also have to say, Daniel Molero bears, because I have a photo of him. In fact, I'll try to add the photo to this video. I will edit the video and add the photo because I don't have the photo with me. But Daniel Molero bears an astonishing resemblance to two people that I've encountered over the past years. One is the unknown male gate installer of 2015, documented in the archive in the website to death, right? I mean, seeing the photo, and I hadn't seen the photo before because, I mean, he comes from Venezuela, from the same place. He's one of these kids from the oil companies of the oil families that came from the oil company in Venezuela from the 80s, right? Like me. But I didn't know him or any of the Moleros for that matter because they're a little bit younger than me. Maybe, I don't know, there's 7 of them, right? But I think the oldest of the Moleros is probably 2 years younger than me. And the youngest of the Moleros is probably 10 years younger than me. And when I went to school, I graduated 2 years from high school, 2 years before I should have graduated. Not because I'm smart or anything, because just my parents put me in a school too early. And I graduated when I was 15, right? So in reality, I was like, compared to Daniel Molero in the school years, I don't know if people in the US have this thing where like you remember, when you go to high school, you remember the crowd that you went, like your class, basically, right? And you maybe remember the class that was 1 year ahead of you, and maybe the class that was 1 year behind you. But it's hard for you to remember the classes that are 4 years behind you, right? Because the age gap at that age is too big, right? You don't have anything in common with people that are 4 years younger than you when you're 14. So anyhow, saying all this, because I don't remember any of the Moleros from the PDVSA days, from the school days, because, you know, the oldest one of the Moleros was probably 4 years behind me in high school, right? So when I was finishing high school, he was probably getting into high school. And the youngest is probably 10 years my junior, right, in terms of high school years. So I don't know them, but my sister knows all of them because, you know, they went to school together. She went to school to some of them, and you know, they played when they were kids with the others. So, you know, like it's so that's why I didn't have the picture, but I got the picture recently from different ways. My former partner sent me a picture, and my sister sent me a picture, and I see the picture of Daniel Molero, and he has a uncanny resemblance to two people. The unknown gay male installer of 2015, he looks very similar to him. And the guy that ran me off the road on FM 1093, which is an incident that is documented, is recorded, you know, with this SUV that had the license plate, the vanity license plate that say Scotland, an abbreviation of Scotland. And then I found that SUV in a house like a mile away from my house recently, like 6 months ago. The driver of that SUV looks exactly like this guy, Daniel Molero, when I see at this picture, right? So it's possible. It's possible it's him. So anyhow, I have to think about how to reflect this in the book in a way that forensically, you know, preserves the trail of, you know, what happened, and at the same time is accurate, right? Because so far the system and my documentation reflects the name David Molero, but I think in reality the guy might be Daniel Molero. And again, remember the house of Daniel King Everette, right? Which was the guy that was following my former partner's Tesla every day when she came back to the gym, from the gym. That dark gray truck, this is documented in the website, was in the house of Daniel King Everette, right? Which, you know, by the things I know at this point, I believe the real name is Daniel, and the Christina, you know, the King comes from Christina Everett King or something, some variation of that, right? But yeah, so that's how they obscure the names in the registrations, okay? And it's a gold mine because if you have a scorer like the one I have, which is, you know, a similar idea to the Curie Write Scorer from Google, you can not only identify the agents, but you can tell which one is the prominent if you have this scoring technology, right? Which is what they have, right? So what they do is that they use the registrations, you know, from the tax assessment websites to identify the agents programmatically. So they're using all these databases of the counties all around the world as their own ledgers and databases to store and track their own agents, right? And that is a weakness because now, for example, right, in my case, that I know what they're doing and how they're doing it, and I have developed the scorer. I have a scorer that's probably very similar to theirs, right? Now I can identify that's why I can identify the agents, because I have the scorer, and they can change the registrations. That's the reason why they don't change the registrations. Because think about it, right? If they know that they are in this situation where I capture the index and that I have a way to score and find the agents, why haven't they changed the registrations in these houses for months, right? They had a chance to do it, and they have the means to do it, but they don't do it. The reason they don't do it is because they need the registrations to be there for their tracking system to work. If they change the registration, then they wouldn't be able to tell who's who, right? And the whole tracking system goes bananas. So they are trapped by their own tracking mechanism, right? Trapped in the sense that now me and everybody else can identify the agents because it's a well-known technique what they're doing, right? It's not rocket science. Anybody at Google that works in the Curie Write team could develop a similar scorer for the FBI in a matter of, I don't know, the first version of it, I wrote it in maybe 45 minutes. Right? the first version. I've evolved it over the last year, of course, but the very first version I wrote, with which I found Alvin Cantero Mina, took me 45 minutes to write. So if the FBI takes one Google engineer that is not compromised and work in the Curate team, they will be able to have this scorer developed in 45 minutes. It doesn't take more than that. So to close this session, I'm going to mention also another thing. In this campaign that I've been doing of mailing, I've mailed federal judges, right, sharing the book with them, diplomats in different places, the press secretary at the White House, I sent her the book, and federal judges, right? Because this is a book registered with the law library of the Congress, of the U.S. Congress, and it's very relevant to judges, right? So I got this little piece yesterday, right? It was I'll send it. I'll post a picture, right? But it's a FedEx package, right? So basically, the person, the clerk of this court, it's a package that came from a court, okay, that I sent the book to, right? And the clerk sent me this letter. So what they did, they took the FedEx package, the same the Amazon box, the same Amazon box in which the book came in, and they put the book back in the box, and they put this letter in, and they FedEx this to me at my home, right? I'm going to read what it says. It says, your correspondence received in the U.S. District Clerk's office on 9/22/2025. And it says, Rinaldo Aguiar. The clerk's office has no record of any case filed by you. The court's authority is limited to civil and criminal cases that are pending before it. Sincerely, Deputy Clerk DBD, 3 letters, D as in Delta, B as in Bravo, B as in Bravo, the letters are BDB, B as in Bravo, D as in Delta, B as in Bravo. And this is coming from the Fort Worth Division. So you see, this is a perfect implementation of the gatekeeper algorithm. So I address this to the judge, but the judge, it's not the judge sending me this, it's the clerk, right? So the clerk is acting as a gatekeeper in this sense. I mean, he basically sent the book back, right? And it's a classic implementation because they didn't put their name, just these initials, BDB, whatever that means. Which I imagine is a misspelling. Like those are not the real initials of the clerk. And I think the word deputy clerk might be telling. And this I'm not sure about. I have to investigate this more. But I think not all the clerks are deputy clerks. I think the ones that are deputy clerks are the ones from the U.S. Marshal Service. But I'm not sure about this, right? I think the U.S. Marshal Service has some officers, that are also deputies and can accept filing, also clerks that can accept filings in cases of emergency and things like that. So I think that's why the word deputy is in there, but I'm not sure, to be honest. So take that with a grain of salt. But anyhow, it's a letter that is unsigned, right? Basically, it doesn't mention the judge. The judge did not receive the package, and the clerk is sending it back without identifying himself. And it's interesting, right? Because they could have just refused delivery, but they didn't. I mean, by this logic, right? If a package from Amazon is arriving, that's obviously nothing related to a filing. Why would somebody file something with the clerk using Amazon, right? So just the fact that it came through Amazon should have been enough to send the package back. But they didn't. They opened it, they read it, they read the letter, the package was open. Oh, besides Amazon, I also sent the letter through a mailing service, right? A physical cover letter with a copy printed of the book. So 2 copies of the book, the one from Amazon and the one from the printing service. So they took the letter out from the closed envelope of the printing service, and then they read it, they put it inside of the Amazon package, and they returned the 2 things together in the same Amazon package that I sent it, via FedEx. So they went through all this trouble. They've created a FedEx shipping label, and they've returned this to me. Now, interestingly, in the Amazon package, there was nothing that had my address on it. They got the address from the letter from the printing service, right? So, I mean, they obviously read the letter and parsed the information to understand who I was and what was my address, and then went through the trouble of creating a FedEx label and paying for the FedEx shipment, which is not cheap, right? And I wonder if the court has a procedure to make these FedEx shipments. I don't know. Sounds weird, right? Because I would imagine a federal court would use USPS, the U.S. Postal Service, right? I wonder who paid for the FedEx package, basically, right? And then they sent me this letter, but they went through all that trouble, but then they didn't sign the letter or identify themselves on the letter, right? So it's very telling. So anyhow, this letter is coming from the United States Court, Northern District of Texas, Fort Worth Division. And it says only Deputy Clerk, BDB. That's all it says. Anyhow, so that's information, right? Oh, and another interesting thing. So in the last few days, right, and I posted a few of these, right, and I've known this for a long time, that they use infrared headlights and stoplights as well as signals, right? So the cars, the important cars, basically the ones that are bug gateways, are identifiable from far away. And in the book, I call this bizarro infrared headlights. Now, one very interesting happened, right? I've been in the last few days running errands with my former partner. She helps me and takes me places, and we go in the black Tesla, which is it's a car I bought, right? And this is the car that was involved in the stage accidents of 2021 and 2023, right? That she suffered. Sorry, I think that 1 second. Right. So, and that car, right, in those two accidents was sent to a repair shop. Anyhow, something very interesting happened, right? The Tesla cameras have no infrared filter, meaning it can capture these bizarro infrared headlights, unlike the GoPro cameras that I have in the Call Mobile, right? Those cameras have an infrared filter, so they're blind to infrared. But the Tesla cameras aren't. So, and I've documented this, right? I posted some of these vehicles and the videos to show authorities what I mean. But the strangest thing happened, right? 2 days ago, as we were coming from the preschool, from picking up Marcelo, and I feel stupid that I've never saw this before. We're in the traffic light. Let me show you where exactly. So maybe authorities, right? If anybody watches this, because there is a traffic camera in there, and this will be visible in that camera. I'm guessing that camera can see infrared, right? Because it's a license plate reader, and those work with infrared, right? So this should be visible in that camera. So if you go to my house here, right, 26714 Valley Side Drive, Katy, Texas, the preschool is on this street where the tennis court is, right? So this tennis court that is here. Cinco Terras Drive, right? So we were in this corner of Cinco Terras Drive and South Fry Road, waiting to cross to make a left turn, right? To come back home. So we were more or less on this point. Let me see if I can give you the coordinates, the exact coordinates, right? So we were in this traffic light over here. So more or less latitude 29.70561, longitude minus 95, 83,012. So they're following us, right? And I see in the screen the vehicles with the infrared headlights, right, flashing, right? But when we get to the traffic light, the car with the infrared flashlight was way behind, and I couldn't see it, right? But the truck that was right behind us had a special characteristic, right? And this was just a random thing that happened that helped it. This particular truck had, and I don't know how to describe this in English because I don't have the jargon, right? But this truck had what I would call like a chrome bumper. I don't know how to call that, but like back in the 90s or maybe early 2000s, it was a common thing that trucks, the bumper was made of like a kind of a steel. I don't think if it's aluminum or or steel, or I don't know exactly what material it is, but it's like a polished metal, right? You know, like the trucks on these days, on the 2020s, the bumpers are painted, most of them, the same color as the truck. But back in the 2000s, the trucks, the older trucks is what I'm trying to say, had the bumpers in the front. Some of them were made of like aluminum or some kind of alloy that was reflective, like they were shiny, you know, and you can recognize this in older trucks. Anyhow, the truck that is right behind us is one of these older trucks that has this kind of bumper, right? And when I look at the camera, I see the reflection on the bumper. So the bumper is acting as a mirror, basically, because it's made of metal. It reflects infrared light. And basically, I see in the Tesla camera, so this is the black Tesla that I paid for, right? I paid for that car. And this is the same car that is documented in the website that has an infrared transmitter mounted on the back of the rear mirror that was transmitting infrared signals to fill denim, right? And the Iranian house, or from Arabic, that Arabic agent that was in front of Britton Ridge Drive, on my house on Britton Ridge Drive, right? This is documented on the website. And I have a video of the Tesla transmitting these signals, right? Anyhow, I see the reflection on the truck, on the bumper of the truck, that my own car has the Bizarro infrared flashlights, flashing lights. Imagine that. So my own car, the car that I paid for, has the same identifying lights, infrared, invisible to the naked eye, that Diosdado Cabello uses in the most important spy vehicles in Katy. So my own car is one of the 7 cars. It's equipped with the same infrared lights. And I could only see this because they made the mistake of parking temporarily in that stop, on that traffic light, a truck that had a bumper that was made of metal, right? Otherwise, I would never be able to see it because the cameras are not filming the car. The cameras are filming outwards, right? And if I stop in front of, for example, a store or a building that is made of glass, usually the infrared light do not reflect in those buildings. And I know this because I've tested this before. So it was a coincidence, a tremendous coincidence, that this truck with this bumper made of metal parked right behind us. But it let me see that my own Tesla, the black car, is equipped in a very consistent way as the other 7 cars. So, I mean, that proves that this car was provided by the 7, right? And these infrared bumper lights are right now in this very moment installed in that car. I don't know if they remove it because I made the comment to my former partner, and they of course listen to everything in the car. So maybe they already removed them yesterday, or they're doing that today, right? Maybe that's why they made the birthday party, to remove the infrared lights, if possible, right? But I'm mentioning this because this is trivial to see. All you have to do, I mean, if I was the authorities, what I would do, I would look for this camera, this traffic light camera, right? Located more or less at the latitude 29.70561, longitude minus 95.83012, and look at the recording, and you will see, if this camera has, of course, no infrared filter, you should be able to see the black Tesla that I own flashing with the infrared lights, right? This would prove it, right? Or you can look at any other traffic cameras in Katy and track the location of that Tesla that I own, the black Tesla, and see in which occasions the infrared light is flashing. Because this is another question, right? Was it flashing because I was in the car and they were tracking me? Or is it always flashing? And this is interesting because if it's always flashing, it means that it's not only a mean of coordination, it's also a mean of prioritizing traffic. I thought about this before, right? It could be also a way. So imagine, right? Like if you are a prominent agent in Katy, well, the network, as a perk, could give, because they control so many cars in here, right? One of the perks for your position and power and pull in the network could be everybody will let you pass when you go through a street, right? So the health app is programmed. I mean, this is a theory, right? But could be. Is programmed so when Diosdado Cabello is driving through Caracas, all the frequency of those lights tells the app this is Diosdado Cabello, and everybody gets out of the way, right? Even he doesn't have to flash a siren, right? Everybody, police, military, citizens, everybody gets out of the way, and he is free to pass, right? And in Katy, if you're a prominent agent like Daniel Molero, as you're driving, if there's traffic, everybody will get, away from you and will clear the lane so you can pass freely. It's a theory, but it's possible that one of the applications of this, right? Because otherwise, why does that black car that my former partner always has driven? I mean, I've driven that car maybe 10 times in my life, right? Why is it equipped with those lights, right? So I guess the question I would ask myself, if I had access to the footage of all the cameras in Katy, is if that black Tesla has the infrared flashlights flashing only when I'm in the car, or always, regardless whether I'm on the car or not. And I think that's an important question to answer because it would be very telling about the dynamics that are at play here. So, I think with that, I'm gonna end this session. I hope this helps. Really, I'm doing all humanly possible to help, and I will keep doing it. And I have to work on a few things today, but I'll make another. I have a bunch of other updates to give, but these were like the more time sensitive ones that I thought I should give first. Okay. Well, so with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.